All right, so for the past several weeks, we've been talking about this inner longing that we have for belonging. You know, the fall of mankind in the Garden of Eden destroyed the perfect relationship that Adam and Eve had with God and with each other. And they were ashamed by their sin, and as a result of that sin, they hid from each other and from God. And from that day forward, people have been afraid of entering into transparent, vulnerable, and authentic relationships. You know, there's this weird thing going on inside us because there's part of us that really longs for belonging, and then there's part of us that just wants to run and hide. You know, we're afraid of what others will see, and you know, there's this desire that inside to present ourselves the way we want others to see us, instead of really letting them see who we really are. And, you know, I don't know if you've ever heard this illustration before, but the word sincere, you know, if you sign something sincerely, right, Steve or whatever, but it comes from a time when stone sculptures would be carving on a statue, and they'd mess up and a chunk would fall out, right? And they'd go, oh man, now what do I do? You know, it's not like you wrinkle up a piece of paper and start over. You know, it's got this chunk of stone that's gone, and so instead of just tossing it away, a lot of times what the artists would do would be to fill that place where the chunk fell out with wax. And it was said that a true work of art was one that was without wax, and that word that they used was a Latin word. Actually, it was two words, sign and cera. Sign means without, and cera means wax. So sincere literally means without wax. And so if you're sincere, you're not trying to cover up or hide your flaws from one another. In other words, you're being authentic. And there's something in us that longs for that opportunity to be sincere, to be authentic in relationships where we can be acknowledged for who we are, and people still love us. They're not going to reject us because of our flaws. Well, you may know that last fall, you may or may not know that last fall that we launched small groups here at EWC. And some of you may be thinking, like, what? I didn't know about that. But it wasn't launched with a big bang or anything like that. We did it quietly. We chose a handful of people that we said, hey, how would you like to be a part of a small group as sort of an experiment? You know, some of you know that when we do ministry around here, my attitude is it's always an experiment. Let's just try this and see if it works. And if it works, you know, great. If it doesn't, well, then we'll go back to the drawing board and try something else. But we wanted to start a small group and have a small group experience with people. And we were challenging those that were part of that initial small group to consider taking on a leadership role somewhere down the line and leading a small group. And so we started, and we met for about 8 months. And we had a great time together. And about a month and a half ago, we multiplied. And now we have 3 different small groups that meet during the week or at some point in time throughout the week. And we've got one down in Franklin County, and there's a couple other ones around here in the city. And the people that have been a part of those have been having a great time together. Somebody told me just yesterday, somebody that was in one of the new groups that just started a month or so said, I just want to tell you, man, this small group has made such a big difference in my life. I just love it. And I thought, wow, that's really something. And I want to just kind of, I wanted to give you guys an experience today of what it's like. I know it's tough to get you out to small groups. I know it's tough to break routines that we get in ruts that we sometimes get into. And so I thought, well, what can we do? Well, we can set you all up in a small group here in the sanctuary on Sunday morning, and then you're not going to have any say about it, right? You're just going to have to do it. So you're here in the small group experience today, and we're going to kind of give you that experience today, hopefully, and you'll walk away having had a really good experience today with what a small group is, and looking forward to this next fall, because we're going to be launching some other small groups in the fall that we would love for everybody to get connected in a small group. Because, well, I'll tell you about that in a minute. I've got 5 reasons that I'm going to share with you why everybody needs to be a part of a small group. But before we do that, what I'd like to do is call up the people that were part of the original small group that started last fall. And they're going to come and just have a seat up here. Go ahead and come. And I want to ask them a few questions so that you can kind of get a feel for what their experience has been like, and you can hear some of their responses to what it was like to be a part of this small group. So I'm going to take my stand. I'm going to move it around down here so you can look at them and not so much at me. So there was a couple other ones that were part of this group. Charles Rock's wife, Sandra, was part of it, and Jacqueline Wallace, who's not feeling well today, and the kids aren't or something, and she's not here, being able to be here today either. But so this was our original small group last fall, and we just had a great time together. And I wanted them to just kind of share from their heart what it was like to be a part of that small group. So somebody just start out. Tell us the best thing about being a part of a small group for you.
The first thing I want to say is this. This whole notion of small groups, and maybe just being a man, I don't know what it was, but I had this vision that I was going to be forced to sit in a semicircle and hold hands and sing songs.
Kumbaya.
And then cry. And I had a huge fear of that because obviously I didn't want that to happen to me. But nothing could be further from the truth. Just a great time, just a great experience with all these guys. Our small group really dealt with some tough issues that were going on in the world. And we're all from different backgrounds here, obviously. And I know Charles and I, we had a follow-up conversation of something that happened in small group. Not that it was bad or anything, but for the ones of you who don't know, I'm a retired policeman, and Charles and I were able to talk about a lot of issues that are going on in the world right now, and I was able to share my perspective of things honestly, and Charles was able to share his well. And do you know how good that made me feel to be able to have a open, honest relationship with somebody with another color that I'd not been able to have that conversation, the whole time I was a policeman, and it was just awesome. And had it not been for the small group, never been able to do that.
Good. Yeah, who else?
For me, it was just laughter. I just love to laugh, and it's very.
Can you hold on a second? Can you you're not on. There you go. I saw
that.
There you go.
Hi. I just love to laugh, so it just felt good to get together with other people. We laughed. In fact, we were laughing when we came up because one of the things that we would joke about is that we would get together at Lisa's house and we would literally all sit in the exact same seats every week. And so when we came back up, I on purpose sat in a different seat. And they're all like, wait. It's like, we are such creatures of habit. It's just hilarious.
It is fun to laugh, isn't it? And we laugh a lot in small groups. So good. What else?
Having the small groups, you kind of get to know the person at different level, and it's not like they shake hands, hey, how are you, and that's it, and go on. It's now when I see him, I shake their hands and say, how are you, and we talk about some of the stuff sometimes that we talk on the small group. So it's more like an intimate relationship, that grows. So I was grateful to be part of it, and I like small groups. So
good. Guys, tell about what it means to you, having been in a small group now, and we're still sort of just scratching the surface as friends. But what does it mean to do life together for you guys?
The type of world that we live in is one that is very divisive. It's very separate. It's kind of, I don't know, not sure who I was talking to, But in the old community, your porches and stuff was in the front of your house. I know who I was talking to now. Okay. And now we have Dexter in the back.
Yep.
Because we're not really trying to engage or connect, you know. I mean, I come from a community where we was all included. We were just inclusive. We was in each other's lives. And now we're kind of like, you know, my household, and I want my privacy, so all my entertainment and all that stuff, I'm in the backyard with it. And church is kind of the same way. We just introduce ourselves and stuff and just see how each other's doing, and then after that, then we don't see each other until the following week. So I've been doing church for a long time. But when it comes down to doing life, I think the small group kind of opens up that door, and we deal with topics and things that we otherwise just wouldn't deal with. So it changed my life. It changed my family's life. I would not have had that at any other time in my life. I mean, I love these people, and I can't say that it would, and I don't mean love as, you know, love for puppies or whatever. I mean, these are my siblings for the most part, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think that's where group comes into play, because we introduce our lives to each other, the stuff that we're not afraid. I mean, you just can't open up and share these things. We've cried together in small groups.
In spite of the fact that Tim didn't want to cry?
Yeah, but
Tim didn't cry. Tim did not cry.
It was probably like right at the edge, about to fall. He sucked it back up. But I mean, we've really shared topics, and there was a level of transparency that you're just not going to get at the local McDonald's or something. It's just not going to happen. So, I mean, I thank God for small groups and the introduction of them.
Yeah. That kind of brings another question, is like, how have you grown spiritually because of the small group? Anybody?
I just remember a couple of weeks ago, not in this group, but in our new group, Steve asked the question, tell about a time when you were lonely. And Moy shared about when he came to this country as a 17-year-old Mexican who spoke no English, and he didn't come with his family, he came with some friends, and then he was here, alone, in a country where nobody spoke his language and he didn't know anybody. And I realized that the level of loneliness that he felt was just no comparison to the loneliest time in my life. And it just gave me just such a deep compassion for people that come to this country from other places and, you know, are alone and don't even speak the language. So that's really just helped me to understand that predicament a lot better.
Okay. Chris?
And to expound on Annie's, you know, there's been stories told by each of us that have really helped us to grow and look at stuff from a different perspective than we maybe would have originally. And I say spiritual growth for me has really been grown because I've had a collective viewpoint for it that I didn't have before. That's really kind of challenged my views and helped me realize that maybe I wasn't looking at something right, or maybe done the same thing for somebody else, and we've kind of had a unified view, I would say, as opposed to 7 different views.
Okay, good.
I gotta share this. You said it last time, but I'm gonna say it this time. We're talking about sharing each other's lives. I went to this Mexican celebration, and I'm talking about, look, I'm used to. Okay. Anyway, can't dance. No. I mean, folks, they get it in. They dance. You hear me? And me and my wife never been to anything like that before in our lives. And I don't believe that, you know, because it was a special celebration. It was something that it wasn't something that was just like open to the public. So that experience, and even, like I said, I'm real open. I never met a stranger. I could talk to anyone, anywhere, any place, anytime. But like I was talking about with my family, my wife is she's kind of withdrawn. She's more observant. So to see my wife, because I think that was your testimony, to see two African-American folks trying to get it in, like, y'all, that was difficult. I struggled. But to see my wife out there, I think dancing with your sister-in-law, trying to follow her, and that was transformative in my mind, because my wife is just not that kind of person. But to see everyone just be themselves and to be so open to something new, to something different. Everything is innocent. It was really nice, and it transformed the Christian experience and what I thought that it could be. It was really cool.
Good.
Yeah,
So, go ahead.
I was just going to add on to, Charles alluded to this earlier, but my wife and I were just talking about this last week, that this, you have a family, but this really brings a new meaning to spiritual family. And then Charles said it really well with brothers and sisters, but I mean, this is, we've entered into a group where we are basically like siblings, which is why we're doing stuff like going to each other's parties and things that you wouldn't normally invite just people you know to.
Yeah, good. So if there was one thing that you guys could share with these guys about, like, to convince them that small groups are like the thing to do and to be a part of, what would you tell them?
I think it's simple. If you're tired of talking about the weather and maybe the Super Bowl or the World Series or just something superficial, if you're tired of that, I've been involved with 2 or 3 churches now, and I'm sad to say that's all I've talked about. I mean, I can talk about the weather all day long. I mean, it's a hot week, but I think probably everybody on the stage is tired of talking about the weather. It's going to be hot. I think it's going to be a little cooler this week, but basically that conversation's over with. Yeah. So join a small group.
Good. Boy?
I mean, you grow spiritually, like you say, and you get to meet people and you get to know them. And earlier, you asked the question, like, what some things that will keep you for not doing or attending a small group. And myself, I didn't share that with my group earlier, but one of the things that I gave up, we used to play soccer every Sunday, and I love soccer, and there's most of the games there on Sunday. Most of the games are the time where we met, and there's stuff, other sports that I really like watching, but nowadays I don't, it's just kind of the same coming to church. I don't think about it, okay, Sunday, yeah, I gotta go to church. It's part of me, and now belonging to a small group, it's just not, it's out of the question. It's something that I gotta do, that I feel like I have to do, because I want to be part of something, and that's the small group for.
Good. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have to say, I've never had the depth of friendship, really, that I've had in this small group elsewhere. There's something about it that's been powerful, that has really grown, and when there's an authenticity to it that has not been in previous friendships of mine. Good.
Thanks, guys. Can you give them a round of applause? And so I want to share with you 5 reasons why everyone who calls EWC their church home needs to be part of a small group experience. First of all, we are made for community. We've been talking about this over the last several weeks, but I just kind of want to reiterate it. You may never have thought about this, but God exists in relationship. God exists. Not only does He want to have a relationship with us, and we know that because He sent His Son Jesus to die for our sins so that we could experience that relationship with Him, but He actually exists in the Trinity. And they have a relationship. The Father, Son, and Holy Spirit exist in community with one another. And so when we talk about the importance of community, it's because we're made for community, because we are made in the image of God. And if God lives in community, if that's how He exists, and He also wants us to exist in community as well. We are hardwired by a relational God to be relational. And if this is how He made us, if we ever expect to experience the life that God intended for us, we have to lean into this hardwiring, and seek out authentic community. The second reason is we're just better together. We're better together. You've heard us talk about that over the last couple of years, and we've referred to that in terms of the merger with Valley View, but it's so much more than that. We truly are better together in every single way. We become the best version of ourselves in community. In community, I love this. This is one of the best things that I think happens in community, is that in community, joys get multiplied. Joys get multiplied. Like if you're happy, if something exciting happens, it's always more fun to share that with more people, right? And when we do that, the joy of that experience is multiplied. But equally to that, when you're going through a tough time, the burden that you're going through, or the tough time that you're going through, is diminished, because in community we share that burden. We're carrying that burden with each other together. And you don't have that if you're not living in community. Doing life alone with no one but Siri or Alexa, to count on or to help us, that's a pretty lonely experience. But doing life in community with others brings out the best in us and helps us to bring out the best in others. The third thing is we can't grow in isolation. We don't grow in isolation. I've heard lots of people, and you have too, say that they don't need to go to church to be a Christian. Well, that may be true, but you do need other believers to grow spiritually. If you try to be a Christ follower without being connected to a group of believers in an intimate and authentic relationship, you're just going to stagnate. And eventually you'll shrivel up and die. The idea of Lone Ranger Christian in the Bible, it's unheard of. It's unheard of. If you're a Christ follower, then you are a member of the body of Christ. And the Apostle Paul says that all of us are a part of that. And he teaches us in Romans 12 and again in 1 Corinthians 12 that there are many parts, but there's one body. And we're all a part of that. And you may be a hand or an ear or an eyeball or a foot, but whatever part you are, you can't say to the other parts, I don't need you. Can't do it. That's his words, not mine. You can't say that. We need each other. And if you're a hand and you cut yourself off from the rest of the body, it's obvious what's going to happen. It's just going to shrivel up and die. Being connected in community allows us to grow and thrive. And when life gets tough, and it will, and we start to struggle spiritually, if we're living in community, others can encourage us and hold us accountable. It's a wonderful thing. It's in being in community that pulls us through those tough times. Ecclesiastes says, pity the man who has no one, who falls and has no one to help him up. See, we need other people in our lives that are on this growth journey with us. And I love what Bill Hybels says. And I have done my best to practice this for many, many years now. But he says spiritual growth happens best in small groups. Spiritual growth happens best in small groups. And I believe that that's true. As a pastor, the people that I have seen grow the most and those that have been most rooted in their faith have been people who have been connected in small groups. I can't think of a single lasting change or impact in someone's life over my 30-some years of ministry that happened in isolation. Can't do it. The fourth thing is we're commanded to be there for one another. We are commanded to be there for each other. At least 58 times in the New Testament, we find the phrase one another. For example, love one another, care for one another, encourage one another, pray for one another, forgive one another, etc. There are 58 different times. And you can't practice any of those commands if you're not doing life together in community. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, so what? I don't need any of that. Well, I doubt that. I mean, come on, think about it. Like, who doesn't need encouragement, right? Who doesn't need to be encouraged on occasion? Who doesn't need to feel loved and accepted by others? Who doesn't need to know that they've been forgiven? But even though I doubt that you don't need that, for the sake of argument, let's say that you don't. Let's say that you don't need any of that stuff. What about those that do? What about those around you that do? If you won't join a small group because you need it and it's good for you, how about doing it for someone else? Because someone in our church needs you, and they need you to encourage them and to love them and to help bear their burdens. You know, God brings people to a church for many different reasons. Think about it. What if God brought you to EWC to impact the life of someone else? What if that's why you're here? And if you choose not to get connected outside of Sunday morning, not to build relationships, not to do life together in a small group, and instead decide to remain anonymous and disconnected and isolated, not only are you missing out on the benefits of community, but you could be robbing someone else of what they need in order to grow spiritually. Now, if I haven't convinced you that living in community and being part of a small group would be good for you, then maybe you could think about joining a small group because it's good for someone else. The Bible says that we are to consider others as better than ourselves, and that we're to not only look out for our own interests, but also the interests of others. In other words, we should put the collective need before our personal preferences. In short, it's we before me. We before me. So even if you prefer anonymity over community, we are called to sacrifice that preference and step out of our comfort zone for the greater good of the community. I've met a lot of people who have resisted being part of a small group, but I can tell you this with sincerity, okay? I can tell you this with sincerity. I have never met anyone that's regretted getting involved in a small group. Not once. And not only that, not only do others need us, but and here's the fifth reason, at some point, we're going to need others to be there for us. Now, you may think you don't need that, but at some point in time, you're going to need others to be there for you. I will never forget the night that I got a call from one of my small group members. Jerry called me up. It was like midnight. It was late, and the phone rang, and I was like, oh, man, what's going on? So I answered the phone, and Jerry said to me, Steve, they just rushed Brett to the hospital. Now, Brett was a member of our group as well. He and his wife, Laura, were members of our group. Brett was 41 years old, and he and his wife, Laura, had 3 little boys that were 8 years old and younger. And Brett was physically fit. I mean, he ran marathons for fun. Now, I don't run for anything except maybe a bear. But Brett ran for fun. I don't understand people that run for fun. They're just weird to me. But Brett ran for fun, and he was in great shape and ran marathons several a year. And but that night, that evening, Brett had been working on his basement. They were doing some remodeling on their basement, and he was building some walls, and he kind of got short of breath and began to feel a tightness in his chest. And after a while, Laura got concerned, and so she called 911, and the rescue squad came, and they took him to the hospital, and she called Jerry. Laura called Jerry. Now, Jerry was just another member of our group, but, you know, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Like, I was a part of that group. I was the pastor, but they didn't call me. They called Jerry, you know. And why is that? Well, because the small group becomes, you know, the line of defense. The pastor isn't the only one that gets the call. And it's awesome when we begin to care for one another that way, and you feel that kind of connection that you can call and say, hey, can you come help me out here? I've got some stuff going on. Well, Laura called Jerry. Jerry called me and said, Steve, we got to get to the hospital. The rescue squad just took Brett to the hospital. And so I got dressed, got out of bed, got dressed, and I went and picked up Jerry, and we drove to the hospital. And when we got there, Brett was gone. And Laura was standing alone in the emergency room with Brett's body. And she burst into tears and collapsed in our arms when we walked through the door. And for the next several months, Laura would tell you this, our small group became her lifeline. And we spent all sorts of time with her. We talked her and walked her through the darkest days of her life. And we were there for her to get her through that. And later on, we were there for her when she met and started dating and eventually married a guy named Eric. And, her life kind of moved on. But we helped her through that entire process. But here's the thing. Tragic things happen in life. They just do. You all know that. You've all had tragic things happen to some degree or another. And if you go through life alone and you choose not to lean into biblical community, who's going to be there for you when your world comes crashing down? Who will you call when tragedy strikes? Who will be there for you when the doctor tells you that the diagnosis isn't good? Or when your company suddenly decides to downsize and you're out of a job and you've got no idea how you're going to make your mortgage payment? Who's going to be there for you when you feel like your faith is hanging by a thread? Again, Ecclesiastes 4, verses 9 through 11 says, 2 are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. For if either of them falls, the one will lift up his companion, but woe to the one who falls when there is not another to lift him up. Furthermore, if two lie down together, they keep warm, but how can one keep warm alone? You know, the sad reality is that life is hard, and it's even harder alone. In fact, I think life, when we're born, there ought to be a little warning sticker, maybe back here somewhere, and it should say, warning, whatever you do, do not attempt life alone, right? We should know from the get-go that we were meant to do life together. We need to find a group of people to do life with. I can honestly say that even though, I've been away from Michigan now and down here for 7 years, still some of the closest people in my life as far as friends are the people that I have done small groups with. We still stay in contact. In fact, I got a call this week from one of my friends where I was in small group with, and he says, "Hey, my son and I are going to Israel. You want to go with us?" Oh, man, I'd love to go with you. You paying, those are the friends. I mean, those friendships mean the world to you, especially when you're going through it. But even to get a phone call, out of the blue, 7 years later, "Hey, what you doing? You want to go to Israel with it?" That's awesome. That's awesome. Those friendships mean so much to me. There's nothing more beautiful than watching the church be the church. And I love seeing what happens when God's people learn what it means to live an authentic community with each other. It's an amazing thing. And we've been laying the groundwork for launching small groups here at EWC for the past year now. And in the fall, we're going to be giving you opportunities and encouraging everyone to get involved in a small group, and do what we've been talking about. Get to know one another, discuss the Bible with each other, and begin to grow spiritually with one another. We want everyone who calls EWC their church home to join a small group. And I hope that when the time comes, you'll be eager and excited to get connected. I was kind of disappointed that we didn't have the opportunity to say, okay, we're doing it this week, okay? So you can jump into a small group this week. But you know what? I think in some ways it's even better to leave you hanging, right? Leave you wanting more. I hope that over the summer that there's just a growing sense of a desire to get connected in a small group, because I believe that small groups will change your life. I believe it'll change our church. I believe it can change the community. So here's what I'd like to do to wrap this up. You're all sitting in a circle, and we did that for a reason, not just to set you in a small group, but to give you the experience of being in a small group. So as we kind of wrap up, I'm going to take just a few more minutes, maybe 5 minutes within your group, to discuss this question, and then I want you to kind of spend a few minutes sharing some prayer requests, some things that are on your heart, and then praying for each other. Now, I know some people don't like to pray out loud in groups. We never put anybody on the spot unless I'm really sure of who they are, and they feel comfortable doing that. But I want to encourage you to pray for one another. You can even, somebody in the group can just pray, or you can go around the group and pray. Multiple people can pray. But share your prayer requests with one another, and have someone in the group volunteer to close in prayer. But here's the question. Let's just spend 5 minutes discussing this question. What are some of the barriers that we tend to face that prevent us from participating in meaningful spiritual community? Say that again. What are some of the barriers that we tend to face that prevent us from participating in meaningful spiritual community? All right, just discuss that amongst yourselves now for the next 5 minutes.